Hello, this is Jed Brewer with Study Groups and Below the Line Club. It's really nice to have you on the call today. I'm excited to be talking about something that's very important, which is labor. And we all depend on people to run our businesses and to take care of the customers that we serve. And there's really two components to labor. One is, myriad, but two major ones. One is hiring the right people, and the other is once you have the right people on the team, executing with them and making sure you're retaining the good people on your team. Today, we're going to focus on the first element, which is how do we hire for success? How do we hire those right people that are ultimately going to delight our customers at the end of the day? So happy to have two experts in that area. David McClaskey, who's president and founder of McClaskey Excellence Institute, and Billy Schaefer, who's vice president at McClaskey Excellence Institute as well, to share with us some techniques for selecting the right people. Specific things they're going to focus on is how do we lead the best selection of hourly customer-facing employees. So we're really focusing on those kind of employees, those ones that are on the front lines interacting with our customers. How can we speed up the selection process? Sometimes we get bogged down just because it's a really slow process and maybe somebody exits the cycle who otherwise could have been a really good candidate for us. And focusing on how you can immediately apply as well. So both David and Billy have great experience helping firms operate excellently in their businesses. And they teach a class which is called Achieving World-Class Results. I first learned about David McClaskey and the McClaskey Excellence Institute through one of our study group members who had taken some of David's classes and said, boy, you should really check this out. And I spent some time participating myself in one of the classes and just found it very rewarding and enriching with good takeaways. And so David, Billy, I appreciate you guys being on the call here today to help educate us on hiring for success. For the audience, we want this to be as educational as possible. If you happen to have any questions, please type those in the dialog box that's in GoToWebinar. I can see those. I have you on mute right now just to keep the noise and the background stuff down, but I want those questions answered, and I'll be able to relay those to David and Billy at an appropriate time so we can make sure your questions are answered. So with that introduction, David, I'm going to turn the floor over to you to share with us more about hiring for success here over the next 60 minutes.
Oh, well, thank you, Jed. Very much appreciated. And let's talk about, as Jed said, two aspects particularly. We're talking about the selecting part of the hiring process. And even though this works generally for everything, we're really keen in on selecting the right hourly customer-facing employees, which is what a lot of the hires are for a lot of companies. So if we think about it, so what are we trying to do? We're going to talk about proven insights and practices. What are companies? Nobody has a perfect process. I'm sorry to say that. It doesn't exist. But there are some that are a lot better performing than others. So the companies that have a much higher probability of selecting the right hourly customer-facing employees, what do? So we're going to talk about proven insights and practices, and we're going to talk about practices that are easy to apply. What we're talking about here, you should be able to go out and apply tomorrow morning to the next hire. So we're going to talk about some really basic things that you can take away from this, and then let us know if you applied it. We'd love to hear about it and how we're doing. So two things to emphasize: we're talking about selecting, not the other aspects of hiring. The other thing is we're talking about the operations portion. And when we talk about operations, these are the employees who directly produce your products and services. And some of the names that some people give that type of employee are associates, team members, drivers, warehouse operators. But they're the ones that are directly doing the service, directly doing the products. And what causes what are the benefits of being better at selecting than your peers are, of being among the best in selection? Well, when you're better at selecting, you have lower turnover and absenteeism. Why? Because you selected the right fit. And because you have lower turnover and absenteeism, you get more job experience, because the opposite of turnover is retention. Now, because you have better retention, what you really have is better trained employees. And this really makes a difference. And you're doing it at not only the same cost, but actually a lower cost, because turnover You see numbers that cost anywhere from $500 to $10,000 a person, depending on what it is. So turnover isn't free. But what can you do to lower it? By making the right choice. So here's the situation. You have a group of candidates to choose from. Which one should I pick? So if we talk about some of the benefits of, these are actual numbers from companies that are really good at selecting. Now, they're good at other things too. So this isn't just, these results aren't just due to because they're selecting better, but it's one of the components that makes it. Some companies have half the turnover of the industry. Because they've made the right kind of picks, they have very satisfied people. In this case, 95% of the employees are satisfied. When it comes down to these kind of various votings you see in areas, the best place to work, a lot of times these companies win the best place to work because these are done by employee votes. And they've said, yeah, we really like working here. Now look at another one of these. Some cases, because you did better selection, 20% of the absenteeism of the industry average. And because you've got more experienced people that stay longer, it lowers your labor costs while keeping your performance higher. Some cases, they have 67% of the average labor costs because they have more experienced employees. And here's one that I know everyone could value. 99.7% of the shifts are fully staffed. Because we know one of the reasons things go wrong with our business is the shift was short-staffed. And so these can all help these things. So a lot of benefits, but we know you know the benefits of doing it. So what is a path? So if you think about it, where you are right now, it's not like this is a new subject. You've been working on acquiring knowledge on how to select the best employees and learning from experience. And so what you have right now, your current state, is the accumulation of all the knowledge you know of how to select. So what we want to do is share some insights that might enable you to perform at a higher level. Now, you'll judge whether these insights will do it or not, but we would have a good probability that if you appropriately apply what we're about to say, you'll up your game and you will be selecting better employees. And then, but you can't just, it's not just, well, here's the plug and play recipe. You say, okay, I get the concept. I see how it is. Now I need to figure out how to adopt it and apply it and then assess if it really has helped my selection process. And we keep doing this until the answer is yes, it has helped my assessment process. So we're it's an iterative process. Let's try it. Okay, that didn't work well, but if I do it this way, maybe it will. Oh yeah, now it's better. So think about that's sort of where we're headed overall. So,
and I love that assessment aspect, David. In taking your class in all areas of operations, that assessment piece we often overlook, but how do we iterate it? What did we learn? How do we make it better? So I appreciate you emphasizing that.
Okay, and it's really one of the things about hiring, particularly if you're hiring for a unit you actually supervise, you get to see how the story ends. You get to see, well, we hired this person and boy, that was such a great choice. We ought to buy ourselves a big dessert. But of course, you're going to know that somewhere between 3 days and 3 months from now. Sometimes it's very rapid, you would know it. In other cases, you can say, this was a mistake. I hired the wrong person. Now you can go back and as Jed, you were talking about, you can go back and assess, what did I know or see about that applicant that made me say yes, when I now know it's a week or two later and we know this was a wrong fit? Was there anything I could have picked up on? And we're going to try to build that skill up so that when you have the decision to make, let's see if we can up the game on that decision. But learning from experience is always part of it. So what do companies know that are better at making the right hiring selection than most companies? So what do they know? And this is going to sound a little bit, it almost sounds too simple to be useful, but it's terribly useful. They know what they're hiring for. Now, I don't mean just the specific job. They know the attributes of the person they're hiring for that will make a good employee for them. And mostly when you talk to hiring managers, their sense of what they're hiring for is somewhat vague, and we need to sharpen it up. So what is it that they are hiring for? And why is this so important? So when you see companies that are really good at selecting, they know exactly what's important. And why is it so important? Here's an Albert Einstein quote. A problem defined is half solved. And in this case, defined means I know exactly what the attributes are that I'm looking for. So now as I look through my candidates, I can see which ones have those attributes, which ones don't. So knowing what it is important. Some of you will remember probably one of the most profound management lists is Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And his second of his 7 habits, the first one is be proactive, is begin with the end in mind. He finds that's not only true for hiring and selecting, that's true for just about everything, but it's certainly true in selecting. Begin with the end in mind. If we go to Alice in Wonderland, there's a famous quote within the book that illustrates this so well. Alice is lost. She doesn't know where she is. She doesn't know where she's going. She's walking in a path. She's in Wonderland. And the path splits, and she's trying to figure out which one of 2 paths to take. And the Cheshire Cat appears. And Alice asks the Cheshire Cat, which path should I take? The Cheshire Cat asks her a question in return. Where are you going? And Alice doesn't have a clue. She says, I don't know. And some of you know the answer for the Cheshire Cat. If you don't know where you're going, any road will do. If you don't know why you're selecting, you don't have really a basis of picking one over the other. But if you know why you're selecting, then you know the right path. Mm-hmm. And basically, it's more likely you'll get wherever you're going if you know where there is. So where is there in the world of hiring? So you need to have having a clear and unambiguous knowledge of this is the objective that leads to better results. So what we'd like you to do is this. If you would, each of you, and if you're in a group, you could work together, but we'd like you to spend the next 1 minute. And what we'd like you to do is would you list why it is you're hiring people? Now we're talking about hourly customer-facing employees. So like your associates, like your team members, in some cases drivers. Would you take 1 minute and write down as many answers that are real for you? Why do you hire operations employees? So I'm timing it, and I'll tell you when the 1 minute's up. So why does your company hire operations employees? Now, if you would you kind of share some of those answers in the chat feature so we can see what some of the things that you're coming up with are? So would you share a few of them in the chat feature? And let's see what the answers sort of sound like.
That chat feature should be in the bottom right of that go to webinar dialog box.
And then on the bottom, it's where you type it in and hit return, and it should post it. We'll see when we get the first post here. So why does your company hire operations employees? I will tell you, companies that are good at selection, they know the answer to this. It's a really solid answer, and we're about to reveal what it is. But
some people have said in the question box, maybe not the chat, but usually hiring for need to fill a shift.
Okay, excellent. Keep going.
Somebody else said to fulfill customer needs and expectations and further the vision and mission of the company.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody else said hire to take care of our customers.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Somebody else to serve our customers, and somebody else to support our company growth.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. These are wonderful answers. If there's others, just go ahead and put it in.
Have more people take David McClaskey's class.
Billy, did you write that one? Okay.
Wasn't me, but it's a great answer.
It's of course we would endorse that answer, but those are great answers. Now think about the nature of this. So think about your answers, and I'd like you to rate your answers on a 1 to 10 scale. Now, 10 is the higher the number, the more vague your answer is. So look at your answers and how clear are they? If it's very vague, give it a 10. If it's crystal clear, give it a 1. And you can give any number between 1 and 10. So look at your list and say, if I were to hand that list to let's say a third-party person and say, here's the candidates, here's our criteria, go figure out which one of these we should best hire. How good a guidance would your page be giving you that has the things written down that you just wrote down? How much would it really help them sharpen, determine, yeah, this is the best qualified candidate of the 5 or 6 that we have here? So rate your question as 1 to 10 and take about 10 seconds, 15 seconds to do that. And if you would, in either the question or the chat feature, would you type your number in? Let's see what kind of numbers we're getting.
So some numbers coming in. One person put an 8.
Okay.
Another person put 8 is my answer. In reality, a 3.
Okay, remember, the higher the number, the more vague the list, okay?
Yeah. Higher number, more vague. Somebody else put a 3.
Okay, which is pretty clear.
Mm-hmm. Got a 7. Somebody put a 5.
Okay, keep going. Thank you for doing this. Participating really helps with the learning, so thank you. Take another 15 seconds and type in your number. What number did you come up with? Remember the higher.
Another person put a 3.
Okay, 3.
A 6.
Okay.
Now it's kind of all over the board between 3 and 8. I haven't seen any 10 or 1s yet.
Okay, and that's not unusual. So I will tell you where we want to come out. If you want to be better at your selection process, you need to have an answer that would rate 1 or 2 on this scale. And we're gonna show you an answer, some insights that might help you get there. Billy Schaefer, our vice president, is going to talk about it. And one thing that I wanted to kind of introduce Billy a little bit. Billy has helped 2 companies go from ordinary to extraordinary operation. And so he's a master implementer. He's been director of operations. And so he's actually led this journey. And part of that includes hiring the right people. He's got 25 years experience. He's one of our certified instructors. Now, one of the things we would like to do, and just so it might be helpful, because this is the idea, we like you to use it. Here's this link, and let's see. Have we cut and pasted this into the chat feature or not? If not, I will. What we'd like to do is copy this chat feature, or just click on it, and it will set up so you could have a meeting with Billy to ask him any questions you have. So you could do it now, you could do it as he's talking. But what we'd like to do is you say, well, okay, Billy, here's my situation. How would it apply to us? So we'll be able to give some general advice, some very specific general advice coming right up. But we'd also like to help after the webinar. And so if you'll copy this link down, and let's see, it's now, is it in the webinar?
Yeah, it's in the chat feature.
It's in the chat feature. So in the chat feature, you can either copy and paste it to like a Word document, or you can click on it and it will go to the page to set up a meeting. So it will go to Billy's calendar. So I wanted to let you know that, and also introduce Billy. So Billy, the floor is yours.
Well, let's talk about the grade. And we talked about where we're going. And we don't know where we're really going because we don't know really why we're hiring. We have these very vague answers that we're doing this to take care of people. Well, when you think about that, I mean, that could be thousands of different ways that we take care of people. But then let's talk about the actual journey, because David talks about if you don't know where you're going, any road will do. Well, let's talk about the road that we went on. Let's talk about my specific road on when I learned how to interview for hiring people. My first bit of advice that I got was, hey, we need to do an interview. Go talk to that person. Excellent. I am great at talking. I could talk to a brick wall all day long. I am wildly excited. I ended that interview, and I bet you I talked 99% of the time because I follow rules. I did exactly what I was said. I didn't know anything about the person. I don't even think I got their name, to be honest with you, in my first interview, but I was wildly excited to hire them because it was my first interview. I wasn't going to fail, but that was the instruction I got. And I kept thinking, I was like, you know what? Got to be a better way than just go talk to people. So I went to the same person that gave me that brilliant advice of talk to them. It's like, hey, that was fun, but I just talked to them. Is there something better that I can do? And they're like, yeah. The second bit of advice I got was just see if you want to hang out with them or not. We work a lot. If you want to hang out with them, they're probably that's who we want to hire. So I went and I talked to them, and there was a whole lot of arbitrary things that came up because I kept thinking, it's like, I'm a Kentucky Wildcats basketball fan. You're a Kentucky Wildcats basketball. You're hired. Done. You are going to be the greatest employee that's ever existed because we both like basketball. And in turn, that has nothing to do with what they're going to do on the job. In fact, it is so arbitrary that it doesn't matter. Now, the third is because I went back again. I was like, hey, that was great. Thank you for that advice, but this is still not getting me to where I need to go. There's got to be a better way to interview so I can find what I'm looking for. And that person said, just watch me interview. Okay, this is the technique. And as I'm saying these three things, I guarantee that I see 42 people in the room, 40 probably have had this same experience when it comes to how they learned how to interview people, if they were ever taught. But the third time is just watch me, sit in and watch what I do. That was the extent of the feedback. So I watched what they did, and they're like, hey, you got it now? I was like, no, I don't. I have no idea what questions to ask, what I'm hiring for. I really don't know, because in my mind, I'm like, well, I need to cover shifts. I could buy a cardboard cutout and cover a shift, but that's not what makes extraordinary team members. And that's what we've figured out is, I hate to say this, is we all make interviewing way too complex, and we have all taken this wild journey on our own interviewing process to find the techniques that we really want for people. And we come up with these crazy interview questions that we think are wildly creative of, what are you bad at? If you were a beach ball, what beach would you be on? Or if you were to race against a NASCAR, would you win? It's mind-blowing to hear these questions that people come up with. They don't make any sense. They're creative. I give them credit for that. And I could probably beat a NASCAR. Jedediah, you shouldn't be laughing on that. I think I really could. I'm fast. But the idea is, what questions do we ask? So let's start with, we can't really define the road until we get to the destination. So let me show you two things. And there's only two skill sets that we're going to hire for. They all will affect what you're talking about, but let me show you these two. So to get rid of that, there's only two attributes. Now, the first one that we're going to talk about, can they follow the processes that you have in place? Can they do this? Can they follow the steps of the approved process? Because you have systems in place, and your systems are the best known way to get your brand standard to 100%. Yet, when we interview people, we completely negate that this is one of the places that we're trying to go to. It is as far on the map as Jedediah and myself. We learned earlier, we're on two different coasts of the world. But if we're trying to get to somebody who can precisely follow steps of our approved processes, we need to ask questions based on that. So I started creating interview questions that actually give me these answers. Let's talk about following a recipe. And you can be creative. This doesn't have to be the most boring, like you're talking to a machine. This is not an AI interview. This is an interview between two people. So you can be a little creative and say, you know what? I bet you your family's got some amazing recipes. I know my grandmother had some amazing recipes. In fact, every time that I make a recipe incorrectly, she will come out of the grave and smack me across the back of the head because she knows that that recipe was perfect. Now tell me about some of the recipes that you do, and how do you follow recipes? You're going to hear one of two variants when it comes to that answer. Oh, I follow it strictly because when I follow it, I'm going to get the end result. Or I like to measure from my heart. I love that answer because cooking is love. But if I put the amount of garlic in my pasta that my heart desires, it's not going to taste good. I love garlic, but not everybody else does. So you want to find people that will follow the recipe precisely. Listening to that, hey, then we talk about structure, because structure is another way that we talk about following steps, being in line. Hey, how do you feel about structure? If the answer is, I need structure, I thrive in structure, and you feel like it's an honest answer, well, then that's probably somebody that is going to precisely follow the steps of the approved process. If their answer is, I really don't like structure, I need to be carefree, and I need to float through the day to allow my creativity to express myself in the most magical of ways. Well, if somebody needs to do that, they're not going to follow your processes precisely to 100%. This is what you need. This is the attribute that you have to have, because everyone in here has phenomenal businesses and they have systems in place. Those systems are in place because they get the brand standard when you follow the system. Your brand standard being met is how you have consistency within your business. And consistency is everything to your clientele. When you want to get your consistent product out to somebody, they want that product. I always talk about my time when I traveled around Brazil. I love the Brazilian cuisine. It was amazing. But after 3 weeks, I was over seafood. I was done. And I remember walking through the streets of Rio de Janeiro, and the most exciting moment of my life happened when I looked up and I saw the golden arches, because I knew exactly what that was going to taste like. And I was so excited for that consistency. And that moment, well, it's not my favorite meal. Those French fries were a godsend, and they tasted so amazing because I knew what it was. And your clientele needs to know that they can get that product 100% of the time. And to get that product 100% of the time, your process steps have to be precisely followed. And in order for them to be precisely followed, you need somebody who is great at structure and somebody who can follow a recipe. So ask questions like that. Ask questions that dictate, can you follow the process steps precisely? Can you deal with the structure? And therefore, your brand standard will be met and your customers will be enthralled with the consistency of the product that you're producing, and they will come back over and over again. Whereas if you don't have people that are creative, and creative's not a bad thing, and there's a lot of roles where creativity is phenomenal. But when this type of role, you want somebody to follow those steps. And if they are that ultra creative, need to float through life, and they're not going to follow your process steps, and your brand standard now, we can't even call it a standard because it just floats in and out, and your people get such inconsistent products, how often are they going to come back? They're not. I am your customer. David is your customer. Jedediah is your customer. And if we pay for something that we expect and we get a wild variation, sometimes we like it, sometimes we not, it doesn't become a value for what we're seeing because I want that product. And that's one of the main attributes that we need. People to precisely follow steps of the approved process. I hate to oversimplify this, and it's not even oversimplifying. It's just simplifying it to the point where it makes sense. Now, there's a key second one that has to happen. They have to show up for work. And I know that that sounds pretty wild, but you can ask a lot of questions that talk about, hey, are you going to show up to work? And ask people straight up, hey, tell me about the last time you called out for work. What happened? And if the answer is, you know what, I very rarely call out for work. I had the flu. My doctor said that I do not need to be there. I would get everybody sick. It was awful. I healed myself and I got back. That's a great answer. If their answer is, I had a once-in-a-life opportunity to go to the Taylor Swift Eras Tour and spend $4,500 on nosebleed tickets, so I didn't show up. Well, then they're not going to show up for another reason or the next concert. There's a reason for that. Now, let me talk about reliable transportation. Too often, that is the question we ask. And I am about to destroy everybody's world when it comes to why that's a bad question. Do you have reliable transportation? Well, today I do. And that could be anything. Be like, hey, my cousin, Bobby, Got a car? He'll drive me all the time. That's reliable. That's not a good question, because you don't know the social interaction between that person and Bobby, and all of a sudden there's a fallout. Now they don't have reliable transportation. These are questions, but now you can take it a little bit differently. And there's a great group out of Tennessee, a masonry group that David and I work with, and we worked on their interview questions to get them to be a little bit more specific. So, hey, reliable transportation doesn't work because your mom might be mad at you, and guess what? You're not getting a ride from your mom that day. But now, if we change the question of, do you have a car? It's mind-blowing, isn't it? It's the same question. But you're now asking, do you have control of the reliable transportation? And therefore, now it's actually reliable. It's a change in the question, and it's so simple. But when you ask questions like that, hey, do you have a car? So now they're in control. You're going to learn a lot more. Tell me about the last time you didn't show up for work. If they say that they've never missed a day, lies, lies. That's the one that I always say when I'm interviewing people. You know, people, they're trying to be the best version of themselves. People have missed work. I'm a workaholic. I love to work. I have missed work. Everybody in this room has missed a day. I don't know anybody that has perfect attendance. That goes back to school. There might have been one kid that had perfect attendance. Maybe that one kid, and everybody looked at that kid like, really? Like, that's wild. So you got to think, if that's one person by the third grade, just by mathematical sake, by the time we get into our 40s, 50s, and 60s, we've all missed a day. So these are the two attributes. That's it. Nothing else. There's nothing else in this recipe for a great hire. I would love to tell you that there is, but there isn't. This is the simplification of the easiest bread. So here's how we apply this. We talked about how we ask these questions. So now you need to think about, how do you ask these questions? And what do you want to know from them? I've given you some examples how I would do this. Hey, tell me about the recipe and how you would follow a recipe. Or even put a recipe in front of them and be like, hey, how would you cook this? How would you do this? Walk me through your process and see how structured they are. Ask them straight up how they like structure. That is a key. You don't have to be creative and think those creative questions. Let me give you a good example of how you might get a real sense of what this person is. My simple question, how do you feel about structure? You're going to get a pretty straightforward answer. I like it, I don't like it. And that's what you're going to get out of that type of question. And you're going to know exactly where they are on that plane of structure-like people. Or we could go to that very creative question of, if you were SpongeBob, would you rather work with Patrick or Mr. Krabs? No matter the answer, you're not going to have a clue whether they will show up to work or follow process steps. I'm intrigued. I'd like to know. I'm going to talk to Patrick all day long because I think he's a phenomenal character. But it has nothing to do with I can follow process steps 100% of the time. And then showing up for work. We talked about, hey, let's be specific in our question. Hey, yes, I have reliable transportation. Well, what does that really mean? Let's ask direct questions. Let's ask, are you in control of your transportation? Do you have a car? Do you live close enough to walk here? These are questions that give us the answers of, yes, they will show up. Or tell me about the last time you missed work and what was your process when you needed to miss work? Oh, I called 3 hours ahead, I did what I was supposed to do, or I just didn't show up. Asking direct questions is how we get direct answers. When we have these wild,
yes. Like structure or not, what if somebody doesn't like structure or doesn't prefer structure, but they're good at it and they can execute structure? How do you disentangle that?
So they won't. That's the key, is there is such a short shelf life of that. Is, yeah, they will fake it for a while, but their true inner self will come out. And if they don't like structure, then they might be good at faking it for a short time, but they won't be able to do it for the long term. So yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, oh, I'm good at this. You're good at faking that. That doesn't mean that you're actually good at structure. So that's how I would see that. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so this is the questions that we want to answer. And what I would implore you all to do with your all's techniques when it comes to interviewing people is be direct. It's no different than any relationships counselor will tell you, which every interview is a first date. Call it what you want. It's two people getting to know each other. And every relationship counselor will say, hey, quit beating around the bush and just be direct with each other. So what's the difference in me getting to know your attributes? And if I'm specifically looking for these two attributes, I am going to ask very direct questions about these two attributes. These are the two things that matter. So let me kind of catch up. Let's summarize what we just talked about. This is what we're looking for. Candidates that will precisely follow the steps of the approved process, and candidates that will show up for work. If you get those two things in place, you now have people that show up and your shifts are staffed, and you have people that precisely follow the steps so that your brand standard that you have spent too many years perfecting is now to each and every guest, each and every time, and you are known for your consistency. I can tell you that the number two, the show up for work, even during COVID, the businesses that I operated were never short-staffed because I took this technique and I asked these questions. I don't know what it's like to be short-staffed. And I can tell you that's a pretty cool feeling to say. It's weird to say, but I'm not talking about this on a theoretical level. I'm talking about every shift that I walked in, and this is multiple locations, was fully staffed because we got people that showed up for work because we asked direct questions. So ask direct questions and find out about these two attributes, and you're going to have some rock stars working for you. I promise that. So, this is what, do this. Go and try this. Even if you are thinking, who is this bald guy and why is he telling me this ridiculous stuff today? Try it. It's no different than my grandmother getting me to eat lima beans. I didn't like them. I didn't think I liked them. I tried them. Now, I'll eat them 5 times a week because I love them. And I promise you that they're healthy for me. They're good for me. They treat me right. And these are your lima beans today. And I apologize to anybody who loves lima beans, or if we have a lima bean farmer in-house, my apologies, because they are delicious and I will preach about them for days. But try this. Just ask direct questions on these two attributes and tell me how it changes how you hire. I already know the answer because I've done it. I've lived in this world and I have taken this, and these are the magic keys that when you put them into the door, on the other side is a magical place. And it's not Hogwarts or Narnia or wherever the magical place is now. It is a realistic place to where you have people that show up, follow your process steps, get your brand standard to 100%, and you're never short-staffed because of these.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, sometimes these simple things are the hardest things to execute and implement. They shouldn't be because they're simple, but we rationalize and get our minds around all other kinds of things and just do the simple stuff. And I also appreciated your ball comment. I didn't know who you were talking about there first, between 3 of us, but okay. Yeah.
And David, the thing is, you don't have to get it right the first time. You ask the best questions, and then you're going to know the answer because the people you hired, you're going to say that was either a good choice or it wasn't. And if it wasn't a good choice, which attribute are they failing at, or both of them? And then you can go back and say, what questions did I ask? And what answers did I get? Because whatever it is, I interpreted them wrong. And you can keep going until you get a high probability shot. So this is a matter of do it, learning, and you will wind up getting better and better and better lists. And so we'll have that. And so, yes. And so the last thing is we and it's still in the chat feature.
Mhm.
If you would like to talk to Billy, and it could just be a simple question, it could be longer, and say, look, how would I apply it under these circumstances, or what would you do with this, or things that are very specific, and there'll be some Q&A coming up right now. But if you'd also like to have the conversation, just go to this link, get on Billy's calendar, and just ask him the questions.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that and
And speaking of asking questions, if you have one, I've got you on mute, so please type it into that questions box here and go to webinar, and I'll relay it to David and Billy.
okay, excellent. And then if you would, this is our email, our company email. If you've used it, tell us how it went. We're always looking for feedback, and just say, yeah, we tried it, and this is the questions that I found were really the ones that really help differentiate, so we could pick up the right candidate and which one we didn't. So just even if it just said we tried it and we've incorporated and our selection process is better, or we're always interested in feedback. So if by the end of the month, if you get a chance, just drop us a quick email that says, look, I tried it, here's what came out, or here was my favorite question, or whatever, or anything like that. So yes, and if anybody,
they may say, I've looked at a lot of candidates, I can't find anybody out there that maybe would do those two things. What would you say to that?
Nonsense. I hate to be brash about that. If you've talked to 15 to 20 people and you can't find anybody that likes structure versus not structure, then maybe we need to look at your hiring ad and say, hey, are you just requesting that only creative types show up? Or because it is such a statistical anomaly to have 0 out of 10 people show up that are at least going to like structure. And if they showed up to the interview, then they're more than likely to show up to work. So then I would say, what questions are you asking? Are you actually asking direct questions to get that answer? And if you don't know the questions to ask, that's when sign up on my Calendly. I'm more than happy to work with you and your teams for a while to come up with some questions to, well, you'll know. And you won't dig so far that, well, yeah, we could dig more and more and more until everybody is going to say they like a little bit of freedom. We're human. We like freedom. That's how we are. So you have to look at it somewhat, not on the complete surface level, but if you completely keep digging more and more and more and more, you're always going to find some part of somebody that wants some creative. And if you look at that small amount and say, oh, can't hire them, they're creative type, that's not how this is. This is finding people who like structure in a midpoint. That's the idea. So, and that's where I would say, hey, sign up on the Calendly link with me. I'm more than happy to work with you and your teams. And I also see somebody said, hey, will a recording of this be available? Sign up for that Calendly and let me talk to them. I'm more than happy, hear it from the horse's mouth and talk about how these techniques work.
And the other part is, we're talking about selecting the best candidates of ones that are already applied. So this is a selection portion. So you still, no matter what you want to do, if I've got 4 choices, you want to pick the best of those 4 choices, if that's my choice. So you always have to make a selection, even if it is, okay, this is not the perfect candidate, but then the question becomes, of the 4 candidates I have in front of me to choose from, this is the one that will give us the best shot out of the 4. So either way, you get to do it. And if anybody's interested in, this is part of a larger set of knowledge. If anybody's interested in the class that Jeb referred to and talked about, our Achieving World Class Results class, it's on our website, McClaskey Excellence, and our next class starts January 8th. And we also teach lean and stuff. But let's get to some questions. What questions would you ask?
Yeah, I don't have many coming in at the moment here. Sometimes when you keep it real simple, it cuts out a lot of the questions with the way you guys have presented it. So yeah, really appreciate that. And I guess one question that I will ask is, what if we don't have clear processes for people to follow? I mean, I think you kind of addressed that at the beginning, and you said you got to know what you want, and that's step number 1. So what do we do if we don't have those clear processes?
Well, we have to define the process first. So way we talk about that is we'll start with the end in mind. Is key is, hey, what are we trying to get to? Now let's write steps or a process to get there. Just think of it like you're typing in a GPS. Just think of it, hey, where am I going and how am I going to get there? That's where you got to start. And this is actually something we teach in the Achieving World-Class Results. And Jedediah, if you got to sit on the process excellence point, is we teach people how to write those processes so they are effective and can get your team to follow them 100% of the time, because that's really the crux of what David and I talk about is let's get our processes written and then get people to follow them 100% of the time. That's the techniques that we talk about. This technique that we're talking about today with selecting the right people and hiring, this is just a small subset of what we teach within that class on how to get your people. In fact, this is one of 9 elements when it comes to managing people that we talk about. And this actually was only part of that one element when it comes to that. So that's something we can help people with as far as writing those processes. And we are well aware that writing processes is not the most exciting part of everybody's day, except for one person in this room, and that is me. I love processes. I am a process nerd, and when I go on vacation, put me on a beach, let me write a process, and I am a happy individual. Strange.
Thanks, Billy. Another question, just kind of thinking, it came in from one of the participants, and they said, hey, loving this content, thanks for doing this. But they asked, would you have any concern about possible claims of discrimination from asking questions about transportation, for example, along in the vehicle?
And you got to be really careful. And this is anything to do with hiring. You have got to understand the laws that you're being governed under. And so that's a good question. Some people have said in their state, if you ask, do you have a car? That could be considered a discriminatory question. Mm-hmm. But so you might have to broaden it out as, do you have reliable transportation? Because they don't stop you from asking work-specific questions. Mm-hmm. So you might have to say, instead of a car, you might have to say, do you have reliable transportation? And so what is it? Mm-hmm. Because it is, I have been amazed with some states of what some people have said. These are laws that govern our questions that we ask interviewing. And so my suggestion is always know them well. And if you have to, a lot of companies have at least an HR expert or attorney they can talk to and say, so do get those rules right and stay within the bounds that you are legally allowed to ask within your state and within your jurisdiction. And they do vary. So I agree 100%. And I can tell you, Jed, very much insightful. I've had one person say, in our state, if I asked them if they had a car, they would consider it discriminatory in our state. Mm-hmm. Other states, they're okay with it. So my suggestion is always understand the law. Any question you have a doubt with, I'd run it through an expert, somebody who's an expert in your state's laws and your area's laws. So you don't wind up having to learn about this the hard way. That's it's one of the things in hiring and in interviewing questions that you have to be very, very careful on. So I would be real conservative and check questions first. But the other thing I have found is that people have gotten too scared. And I've listened to conversations where people are talking to their expert. And a lot of times the expert's saying, no, that's okay. You know, don't ask it exactly that way. But if you ask it this way, it's perfectly okay question to ask. Mm-hmm. So I would say go to your expert, go to somebody who really understands it so you can have a heads up.
Mm-hmm. Well, for the audience, I hope you guys found this conversation to be informative. David and Billy, I really appreciate it. For the audience, we'll send out a recording of this. We'll also give you David and Billy's contact information. The link was posted there to sign up on their calendar, but I know that they would be happy to email or however you'd like to talk to them to follow up on any questions that may be percolating from this time. So keep it simple is kind of my big takeaway here as it comes to hiring. But I think the stats, David and Billy, that you guys showed is, boy, when we get the process right, it makes big difference in our operations and for our customer base. So appreciate your expertise and being here on the call with us. Hope you all have a great day. Take care.
Great. Thank you, Jed.